Hey guys, welcome back to another Quick Tip Tuesday. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks on how to get the most pigment out of any eyeshadow, whether it be drugstore or high-end. And for the demo, I'm going to be using the new Maybelline Graffiti Nudes palette to really show you guys that you don't need a high-end eyeshadow in order to get a super vibrant look. So if you're interested, keep on watching. Alright guys, so throughout this tutorial, this side is going to be the eye that is not as pigmented, and this side is going to be the side that is pigmented. So keep that in mind, and I will remind you throughout the tutorial as well. So I'm going to start off by priming both lids with Too Faced Shadow Insurance Primer, except the only difference is that this side I'm going to set the entire eye with powder, and this side I'm not going to use any powder at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply this to both of my eyelids. So now I'm using my Laura Mercier translucent powder to set this entire eyelid with powder. And again, on the other eye, I'm not going to use any powder at all. So in order to make the darker eyeshadows pop, I'm going to be using a cream eyeshadow that is darker in tone to really make those shadows pop. So I'm going to be using this gray eyeshadow stick from NARS. It is the shade Reykjavik, and I'm basically going to outline the area where I want the darker shadow to be. So I'm going to go onto this eye, the one that's going to be pigmented, and I'm going to start on the lash line and work on this outer V, and I'm also going to apply this to the lower lash line. So you don't want a lot of product there because this is really dark, and then you're just going to take a blending brush and blend this out. So now I'm going to go into my Maybelline Graffiti Nudes palette, and I'm going to be using the brightest eyeshadow first to make sure that it stays bright, because once you apply a ton of eyeshadows, especially if they're really dark, if you try and add a really bright eyeshadow later, sometimes it doesn't show up as bright as you want it to be. So I'm going to go into this really vibrant magenta color, and I'm going to apply this to the inner bridge of the nose for like an added pop of color. So I just want to take a moment to compare the two sides really quick, and you can see that the side that was completely set with powder is not nearly as pigmented as the side that just has the eyeshadow base on it. So already you're seeing a huge difference. So the next shadow I'm going to be using is this grape colored purple, and I'm going to apply that to the lid, just towards the center. I'm not going to put it on the outer V because the darker green eyeshadow is going to be going in that area. And again, you can see the huge difference from one side to the other. I mean, just look at the pigmentation of the purple eyeshadow on the side that just has the primer on it versus the other side. Huge difference. Next, I'm going in with this green eyeshadow, and I'm going to focus it on the outer V portion of the eye. I'm struggling to even get the slightest pigment on this side. I've gone in with the eyeshadow like 3 or 4 times now, and nothing is happening. And I think I'm just going to give up on the other side. As you guys can see, it's just not happening for me. So now I'm just going to repeat the same steps to the lower lash line, except I'm going to add a little more of that darker gray cream shadow to the side that's going to be pigmented, just to make sure that it stays pretty vibrant underneath the eyes as well, since I've already set my under eye concealer with powder. Alright guys, so I recorded that demo on another day, so now I'm back with both eyes looking normal, lashes and a lip. So now I'm going to go into my top tips on how to get a super pigmented eyeshadow look. So obviously, tip number 1 is to not set the entire lid with powder. You can do that for blendability reasons, or whenever I do a look where the lid is really light, I'll tend to do that. But when using really vibrant eyeshadows, you tend to sacrifice some of the pigment when doing that because the shadow underneath is going to dilute the other colors. So I highly recommend just setting with powder from the brow bone down to the crease, so that way you can still blend out the edges of your shadow without losing any pigment on the lid. And you probably noticed in the demo, I didn't even do that. I didn't set the brow bone down to the crease. So what I did was just take a blending brush. I used brush number 5 from IT Cosmetics, and I just picked up a translucent powder, the Laura Mercier translucent, and just blended out the edges. So if you're wondering how I blended it out, that's what I did. Tip number 2 is to use a colored eyeshadow base to really make an eyeshadow pop. So in this case, I used a dark gray cream eyeshadow on the outer V to really make the green stand out. Without it, it just sort of diluted the color as you saw in the demo. And normally the colors I use for a colored cream eyeshadow are brown, black, gray, and white. So white, even though it's not dark, it still makes eyeshadows really vibrant. And they're always matte. They never have shimmer in them unless the eyeshadow I'm placing on top is also super shimmery. I find that when I use a shimmer colored eyeshadow base and then put a matte eyeshadow over it, it doesn't ever look right. It doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't translate well. So just make sure it's matte if you're gonna put a matte eyeshadow over it. Tip number 3 is to completely cancel out your eyelid color, which is why a white eyeshadow base tends to work really well. I absolutely love the Urban Decay Enigma eyeshadow primer. It's a really muted nude color that makes any eyeshadow pop, plus it's extra tacky, so I just really love the way eyeshadows go on. It doesn't crease, it makes every eyeshadow look I ever do super vibrant, so I highly recommend that product. I'll make sure to link it down below. Plus, when you purchase that primer, it goes to a good cause, which I will also put all that information in the description box below for you guys as well if you want to check it out. And tip number 4 is to wet your eyeshadow brush. And I always recommend picking up your eyeshadow first, then wetting it, and then applying it to your eye, because if you wet the brush first and then go into your eyeshadow pan, you'll tend to get this like weird layer eventually that's like really hard. You probably have noticed it in some of your eyeshadows. It also comes from rubbing your fingers in an eyeshadow pan because the oil tends to create this really hard layer that forms on the top of your shadow. So I recommend picking up the shadow, wetting the brush with like a Fix Plus or any setting spray, and then packing it onto the lid. This also works really great for pigments, pressed pigments. It always makes your eyeshadow stand out 10 times more. And that concludes all the tips I have for you guys. Hopefully, if you have some eyeshadows at home that just weren't doing it for you, or a palette that you thought wasn't vibrant enough, try it out with these tips and tricks and let me know how it works out for you guys. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so I see you in the next one. Bye guys.